Hello friends, thank you for joining me for my session. I am super excited to be part of this Virtual Summit 2020, and today I'm going to be sharing with you how to give Power BI to the people, with an emphasis on securely sharing your insights. My name is Daniel Glenn, and I hope you can sit back and learn how we can share with Power BI securely. But first I want to say congratulations on attending this year's PASS Summit. But make sure you take advantage of everything PASS has to offer by visiting pass.org. You are already a PASS member, but now there is a pro membership that gives you access to exclusive training and network opportunities. Also, make sure you connect with your local user group and attend SQL Saturdays, whether they are virtual or in person. If you don't have a user group local to you, you can also join virtual groups via the PASS website. And of course, you can take advantage of all the volunteer opportunities to get involved, from helping your local user group all the way to being an organizer for your event near you. Please fill out a session evaluation for all the sessions that you attend at this year's PASS Summit. Your feedback is not only important to PASS, but also gives a speaker help to understand your needs and to receive your praise. If you submit your eval sessions before Friday, November 20th, you'll be eligible to win prizes. And who doesn't love prizes? We will, for my session today, follow the agenda here on this slide. First, we will do a short introduction to what Power BI is and its capabilities. We will then talk about where your data is and all the different places you can find the data around you. We'll then cover the reasons why you would want to share your data using Power BI, and then what your sharing options are. Finally, we'll take a look at governance and what role governance plays in your approach to rolling out Power BI, as well as administrating its capabilities, including sharing. Here's my one slide that gives you all my contact information. I am the practice lead for a Mid-South based consulting firm called InfoWorks. We help our clients transform information into powerful solutions. And if you need any assistance in anything I talk about today and share with you, please let me know. I'm also very passionate about building technical community, and what that really means is I love being involved with user groups, leading user groups, volunteering in the community, as well as speaking at events like this. I co-host as well a weekly podcast called the 365 Message Center Show, where we cover all the new releases for functionality in Microsoft 365. You can find all the relevant links to watch us live on YouTube or subscribe via your favorite podcast app for the audio version on our website at messagecenter.show. And of course, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and on my website. All of those are Daniel Glenn. Okay, let's talk about what is Power BI. Power BI is a business analytics service that delivers insights to enable fast, informed decisions, transform data into stunning visuals, and share them with colleagues on any device. That's any laptop, desktop, mobile device. Visually explore and analyze data, whether that data is on-prem or in the cloud, all in one view. Collaborate on and share customized dashboards and interactive reports, and then scale your organization with built-in governance and security. Really what we're talking about is driving a data culture with everyone for any of your decisions, and really at every scale. The building blocks of Power BI are data sets, which is the root of any analytics tool, visualizations, taking that data and making it come to life to tell a story. Reports, which are a grouping of visualizations that can be interconnected to tell a great story. Dashboards, which are visualizations, possibly from different reports, to reach further and share. And then finally, tiles, which are additional visuals you can add to dashboards. So these all build upon each other. You first have a data set. You need the data to be able to create visuals that based on that data. And then those visuals are put on a report page, whether it's one page or multiple pages. And from those reports, those visuals on those reports, we can create dashboards. All of those feed into the Power BI service. So Power BI, when we say Power BI, we mean all of this and much more, really. Because it's not just the Power BI service that is the cloud, that's powerbi.com, but it's also Power BI desktop, whether you download that as a Windows or Mac desktop client, or you're utilizing the Windows Store version of the Power BI desktop. We also have Power BI apps, which are mobile apps, as well as applications that we may configure ourselves, develop ourselves, and embed Power BI in them. Power BI will unify data from many sources to create those interactive, immersive dashboards and reports that really provide actionable insights and drive business results. Power BI monthly active usage numbers were released about a month ago or so, that they showed that this past year they had the 5th year of triple-digit paid usage growth. So that's the 5th year in a row of triple-digit paid growth. So there are lots of organizations using it. In fact, that number is approximately 150,000 organizations are utilizing Power BI for their data visualizations needs. 97% of the Fortune 500 use Power BI. So when we talk about having that single view, that pane of glass of really communicating your data story to your users, we mean it. Any device, whether that is mobile, like I said before, desktop, laptop, and we really want to focus on driving action with our reports and dashboards. Power BI is part of Microsoft's Power Platform. The Power Platform spans Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and Azure to deliver powerful solutions that include Power BI, of course, but Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. Power Apps is a way we can build custom solutions for web and mobile. We could build highly customized task-driven and role-based Canvas apps. Power Automate gives us the ability to create an automated way of handling our business processes via workflow. Virtual Agents is really that chatbot framework where we can really enable subject matter experts to easily create these agents with a graphical interface, enabling Virtual Agent to take action on the customer's behalf. And we do this utilizing the Common Data Service as well as those data sources that may be on-prem or other cloud locations. And we use data connectors to connect with those data sources. If you have any questions about what I just talked about for Power BI or the Power Platform, please use the question and answer functionality in this virtual meeting tool, and I will be happy to answer your questions there, okay? Now that we talked about what tool we are using for today, namely Power BI, let's talk about where your data actually is and how to use it. You should study and know your data before you use it. This requires you to know where it is. Is it held within systems and databases, Excel files? Is it on-prem, and therefore you're going to need to on-premises data gateway? Or is it in Azure, Microsoft 365, or is it in some other cloud service? Your organizational data will include historical data, current data, and predictive data. It can also include data from partners and clients. Maybe it is held in different departments or with different users in those departments. So do a survey of your organizational data. Find out where it is. And a survey is generally required to understand all the data that you have. You also have access to public data. In most industries, public data is very important, including from other companies and governmental entities. But it's also important to keep in mind public data is not to be fully trusted, and it needs to be verified that you're actually using data that is the truth. Public data also puts a wrinkle in your organization and consumption of that data because you don't control the updates, nor do you know where the underlying data sources of that information are located. There are many data locations that you need to keep in mind when you're doing that data survey I mentioned earlier. Remember, the survey is a tool for you to use to understand not just where the data is, but in what format it is being used. The format could be in Excel, which is really the most used data collection tool in the world. Just think about all those Excel spreadsheets and workbooks that are out there that your users are using to get their job done. All of that data is organizational data that, if harnessed and used properly, could really be shared with the organization to help make those decisions that are important for you to succeed. Of course, you have data servers, a SQL Server and the like, that house information. That information could be from collection points that are fed directly into the database tables, or it could be from different systems that are using the database as a storage point. You could also have text-based data sources. In fact, a lot of public data sources from the government are text-based and on the web where you have to do a screen scrape. You could also have text files that are used to exchange information between partners, suppliers, or even customers. These flat files can be used and consumed in that format or brought into a database and then consumed. We could also use feeds from our applications to feed directly data to us through OData feeds and the like to get the information from the source of truth. And really, the list of where we can get information goes on and on. I didn't even mention something like SharePoint, where we can grab information within people's lists and libraries on their sites, or Power Apps that I talked about before, and various other data sources. So now that we've talked about all of those data locations, we do need to ask, why would we want to share data and visualizations with our employees across the departments and geographies? Data is the core of any business. We have customer information, orders, sales, marketing, employee data, financial data, and it's important to be able to use that data wherever it lives to gain insights, to automate processes, and allow our users to interact with it using forms, even on their phone. We've all got data about people, whether it's our data or recruiting data. There's going to be financial data showing how our organization is doing with cash flow. We could also have marketing data that is about our marketing campaigns and how they're doing and bringing new customers. And then we're going to have sales data, whether that's selling a product or selling our services. We're going to have that information about what's going on, and it'll show how we can improve. We also have to remember that changes are all around us. And if we don't collaborate with our fellow associates in our organization, if we stay siloed, we're going to lose in this competition. The competition is with outside forces like competitors, but it's also a competition with us. We compete to keep increasing our market share, our customer service, and increasing the quality of our people. So gaining insights on all of those areas is key to making sure that we stay on top and keep improving. We can't stay in our silos. We have to share so that we all know not only where we've been, but where we're going. It has been proven time and time again that if we keep data to ourselves, if we keep that information about what we're doing and how we're doing and not share, we will ultimately fail as an organization. We will only succeed when we work together toward that common goal, whatever that common goal is set by leadership. We've talked about our data sources and why we should share our insights with that data. Now let's dive into the options we have for sharing. We can share with groups, whether that's distribution groups, security groups, and of course, Microsoft 365 groups. We can grant access to specific users only. Of course, that requires license for Power BI Pro or having our data in premium capacity. But it's a shareable URL that we can provide to our users so they can consume our reports. Can really create a complex web of access. So it could be difficult to manage at scale if everyone's just sharing with a specific user every time they want to share. And the sharing also could be with external users. A Power BI Workspace is a collaboration area within the Power BI service. A workspace is a distinct area separate from My Workspace, which is the out-of-the-box. When you sign up for Power BI, each user gets that My Workspace. And the Power BI workspaces are dedicated to a specific team, subject area, or project. Reports are published to a workspace so that colleagues can view the content, collaborate, and contribute as appropriate. And that is a security boundary in that workspace. You control who has access to that workspace. And it provides a grouping of assets. So you, of course, have those data sets, reports, and dashboards and flows. Access is granted, like I mentioned, to users or groups, as I talked about before, whether those are Microsoft 365 groups or security groups. And you can have more granular security there in the Power BI workspace. And those workspaces are the building block for apps. A Power BI app is a set of packaged content in the Power BI service for the purpose of distributing related reports and dashboards to a larger base of consuming users. One Power BI app may be published for each workspace if you desire. Can be used to separate dev and test from production. So you can create a Power BI app for that you're working on developing and making sure that it looks the way you want it to, and then you can publish it so that everyone can consume it that you have designated, and then you can keep working on that app in the background as a dev tool, as a dev space, and then republish it. The Power BI apps do allow for custom navigation between your reports that you're sharing. It does require pro licenses or your data to be stored in a premium capacity for that sharing, and that's really for all sharing within Power BI. If you're going to share, then that is the line of demarcation, as it were, for you to have users have a license. Again, whether that's a Power BI Pro license or within some sort of premium capacity. We can do a secure embed for sharing in like SharePoint or our internal websites and systems. It's an embeddable iframe code. It's for reports only. And again, it does require a license for those that are sharing and for those that are consuming. And it's really appropriate for sensitive data because when we're embedding this secure embed, you do have to sign in, whether that's directly or through a single sign-on to Power BI to actually see that embedded information. Publish to web is for publishing reports to the internet for everyone to see. And I say everyone because when you publish to web, you're giving a URL that you may share with one user, but if they forward that URL to anyone else, then they have access to it as well. There are no permissions required. When you share it via the web, then everyone gets to see it. They don't have to request access. It's really the simplest way to share publicly. But we do have to be mindful that this really is not for organizational data that needs to be secured. I often see this being utilized for public data, and there actually is a Power BI public gallery available on the powerbi.com website, where it's just a gallery of all types of public data. I also see this being used for organizations websites, when they want to share on their public website some information, and they can utilize this publish to web feature. We can also share it via Teams or our applications similar to Teams. Microsoft Teams gives us that capability. We have an area, a team, that is secured. It's a group of our people, whether it's project-based or it is about department-based or functional area. And so we can share our reports within Teams as well, and I'll showcase that. You might notice that there's one item missing that a lot of people start off with when they're sharing, and that's sharing directly the PBIX file. A PBIX file is the file type of Power BI Desktop. When you save your report locally as you're working, and you want to make sure that it's saved as you're working on it and developing those reports. But sharing that PBIX file isn't really supported, and it's not supposed to be as a sharing option. It is designed, the Power BI Desktop is designed to be a design tool for Power BI service. It's not meant to be a tool to create reports and then share them with that PBIX file. That file does contain the data cache, queries, reports. So there's no scheduled refresh when you're working directly with the PBIX file. Have to really can have continued access to the data for refreshes. And of course requires the desktop app. You're not going to be able to view the PBIX file through the web unless it's uploaded to powerbi.com, the service. And it's not really for sharing, it's for copying. Remember, if you give that PBIX file to someone, you lose all control of that file and that data. They can do with it whatever they want. So that's why it's not here. I don't want you sharing directly PBIX files with others unless you're giving them that file to as a starting point for them to start their designing for when they're going to publish their reports. Now that I've talked about all those sharing options, let's dive in and demonstrate how we can use and share our data in Power BI. Okay, let's first start with Power BI Desktop. And what are our sharing options here with just utilizing the desktop application on our computer? First, you'll notice there's no share button here in our workspace on our canvas, but we can go to File and Export, and we have two options. One is Power BI Template, and it is just that. We'll take what we have here, create a template to be able to share, but this is very similar to just giving the PBIX file. And then we talked about how we really shouldn't be doing that. This is the one case where you might want to do that if you want to set up your report for it to be then a template for others to use. The second export option we have is export to PDF. And this will export the report page that we have created here in Power BI Desktop to a PDF that we can share. But again, that is a snapshot in time of what this report is. But maybe that's what you need, is to just share what is the report right now as a PDF. And so you can export it that way. The other way is to publish. We have one option, which is publish to Power BI. And we don't need a pro version license of Power BI to publish to Power BI. We can do that to My Workspace, which is that default area within the Power BI service. All right, now that I've mentioned the Power BI service, let's take a look at it. So I just go to powerbi.com and log in, and I'll be taken to my landing spot. I will show any of my favorites that I have favorited, any of the reports, and the ones that I have used frequently, and the ones I've accessed frequently as well. It'll also highlight the workspaces that I'm involved in and maybe some apps that are recommended for me. So let's go to My Workspace. I've mentioned this numerous times today. And really what this My Workspace is that default place for you to create or publish your reports to, create reports, and consume those and work. You get access to the Power BI service Power just for you. Now, again, this is a free version, is required, so you don't need to pay for Power BI yet. You can publish to My Workspace and just utilize it here until you want to share. Now, I do not recommend you sharing reports in your My Workspace. I recommend utilizing My Workspace as just that. It is My Workspace. It's where I am consuming the reports I've created, where I'm manipulating and editing those reports. It's all within My Workspace, but it's mine. I highly recommend not using My Workspace for that place to share with others. The way we share with others is in workspaces, okay? Other workspaces. So let's take a look, maybe contract management. So here's the contract management workspace. And this was created to show our contracts and where we stand with those contracts. So we can go to, let's take a look at a report, maybe contracts. We can export this. We have some options for exporting this report from the Power BI service. We can export as a PowerPoint. Again, this is just a snapshot of what's going on, but it does give us in a PowerPoint format. So if we're given a presentation, that's the quick and easy way to get started with publishing our content as slides. We can export as PDF, mentioned that in the Power BI desktop as well. And we can also export to Excel in this Analyze in Excel function, which is really powerful. It's not just dumping the data into cells in Excel. We're able to use pivot charts and such to really analyze the data there in Excel. So we're exporting it there. These options can be controlled from the Power BI admin portal. If I'm an admin, then when I go to powerbi.com, I can access the admin panel, the portal, by going to Settings and then Admin Portal. And all my sharing options are there. And I'll come back to that after I discuss and go through some of these. We can, let's go back to that report and I'll show how we can, instead of exporting, we can share. So we can share this report. We click on Report. We can enter the person that we're looking for, and this is going to do a lookup in Azure AD for this person. So let's share with Lisa James. We can include a message about this report is great. We can share this is going to send an email to Lisa James telling her that she now has access to this report. And then I also have some options down here. Do I want to allow my recipients, so Lisa James, to share the report? So I'd be giving, if I leave this checked, I'll be giving Lisa James the permission to share it with others as well. I don't want to do that. I want to control who has access. Do I want to allow recipients to build new content utilizing these data sets that I'm sharing? Remember, Lisa James will have access to the data set, not just the visuals. Do I want to allow her to build other content reports based upon those data sets? And then do I want to send an email notification to recipients? Now, if I uncheck that, then they won't get an email. So I'm going to need to copy and paste this report link into an email that I craft myself. Okay, so then I can just share with Lisa James, and now she has access to this report. I can find out who has access by just going back to Share and then clicking on the Access tab. You'll notice that Contract Management, which is this workspace, owns this content, but then you also see Lisa James here. I've given her permission to read this report. I can change the permission she has to read and reshare. Remember, I unchecked that box when I shared it, or I can remove her access directly. And I'll go ahead and do that. So now it's just back to those members of the contract management group. Okay. I can also not just, I can share it with external users here. So if I want to share with maybe Jane at example.com, I am given a warning that there are people within the email address space that I've entered that are external and they're outside of my organization. This is a great warning to say, hey, wait a minute, are you sure you want to share this with external people? And this goes back to that planning, right? We want to plan for how we're going to share. Do we do ad hoc sharing, or do we manage this process? So that's part of the governance plan that I'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so that's sharing the report directly. I can embed the report. For instance, if I want to embed this report on a SharePoint Online page, I can click SharePoint Online. I just copy this embed link, go to my site, and then I add the Power BI web part. Click Add Report, and all I need to do is paste what I just copied into that space, and then I pick which page I want. This only has one page, and I can say how I want the display to show, and then that's it. I just publish the page, and now the report is on this page. We do need to remember that I have shared this on SharePoint. So for me to have access to this report on the SharePoint page, two things have to happen. One, I have to have access to the SharePoint page, of course. But two, I have to actually have access to this Power BI report. Remember, I showed you how to see who has access. It would be members of this contract management group. And that group actually needs to have access to the SharePoint site, but it has to have access to this report. And then I'll be able to see this report on the SharePoint page, and I'm able to interact with it just like I am if I'm viewing it in the service. If I don't have access, it'll just be a gray box saying I don't have access to this report. Okay, let's go back. I can share not just in SharePoint Online, but in a website or portal. And what this is a way for us to share if we have a website, internal website, or maybe it's an on-prem SharePoint server. This is how you do it. So you can copy this link for this iframe, for instance, and you can paste this into your SharePoint server on-prem site. And what it'll do is it'll put the report there. And if the user is not signed into Power BI via single sign-on or something like that, then it'll just give them a way to sign on to Power BI when they open up that SharePoint page and authenticate themselves to Power BI, and then they'll be able to see the report. This is a fantastic improvement over what we originally were doing, which is this publish to web. A lot of people were doing this to share their content on their internal websites. Well, that's a no-no, because remember, when we do share publicly, this is for everyone on the internet. If they have this link, they're going to be able to share. So we have to keep that in mind. And then the last thing I want to here on this section I want to talk about is this option to chat in Teams. This is brand new. So when I click on this, I am presented this UI for me to share this report in a team. Okay, so I'm going to search for the channel Business Insights, and the channel name is at the top, the team name is at the bottom. So for under Leadership Business Insights, I can share this report directly within that channel. Remember though, just because I'm sharing it to that channel, they need to have permissions to be able to see this report as well. So let's go and look at the leadership, and let's share maybe this lost days report in chat in Teams. Okay, so I'm going to go here, go to Business Insights. I'm going to say and I'm going to click share. Okay, just put a little note in there, and now my link has been shared. Okay, so I'm going to pop over to the Business Insights team in the Business Insights channel for my leadership team, and voila, there's my message I just published, and everyone can click and access this report. But the power here really is in sharing in teams is that I can actually have conversation about this report within teams, so we can help each other improve on this or make comments on this report directly within teams and keep it outside of the report itself. All right, so we've talked about workspaces. Now let's talk about apps. Every user will have of the Power BI service can go to apps and see these apps that have been published for them to consume. One is contract management. We took a look at that before. Leadership, as well as the coffee company published. So let's take a look at how we got here, how we can consume this as users from here, but how did it get published here? So let's go back to the contract management, and you'll see that up in the right-hand corner it says Update App. If there was no app associated with this workspace, remember it's one app per workspace, so we can't create multiples, but this is a way we can publish an app, users consume that, we can edit reports that we've published in the app and develop those, and then we can update the app with the changes that we made. So this is kind of separating out that production and dev. So we can click Update App, change our navigation, change the permissions. Right now I have designated only the group help desk. Security group has access to this, and I can make my selections here on how I want them to interact with this app. So let's create one from scratch. Remember, I've already got one created for contract management, so we need to go to a workspace that does not have an app yet. So I know it doesn't because it has the Create App button. This is the Sales and Marketing workspace. So I'm going to click Create App. Now I give it a name, so remember, give it a good name that people will recognize. Give it a description of what this is all about. We can give a support site URL here. This is nice if someone has a problem with this app. They can go to an internal website for us to receive their request. We can change the app logo. It's going to utilize the workspace default logo, but you can change it and have it your own. We can go to navigation. This is where we can build out what we want our app navigation to be. We can move items around to make it more pertinent to this app. We can hide specific navigational links so that they can't get to it when they're consuming the app. And then who can consume it? We go to the permissions tab. Do we want the entire organization to consume this app, or just specific individuals or groups, security groups, 365 groups, and how they're going to interact with it? Once we have it set up, we click Publish App, and then that's when our users can come to apps. And if we've given them permission in that setup in the last tab, then they'll see that app here. Remember, this is the app as it's published. When I go back and edit reports and such as the author, I have to republish. I have to update the app, clicking that button, so that it will actually showcase for those that have subscribed, that have added the app to their environment. Okay, let's go back to Teams, and I want to show a great way that you can add reports to your team so that maybe your digital workspace is centered on Microsoft Teams. It's where you're doing your work and chatting and consuming information. Well, we can add a report as a tab in any channel. So I can go to Power BI. I can go to, this is the leadership workspace, and let's say I want to add lost days. I can post a new thread in this channel about this tab if I want. It just says this tab has been created, but I'm going to uncheck this and click Save. Now, my users can come in this channel, can come to this tab and consume this report. They don't have to go out to powerbi.com to consume this report, they can do it straight here. This is very powerful, so we can have our digital workspace and be here and get our job done. I would recommend renaming this so that it's more, people actually know what it means. So maybe lost days report. A great way for your users to consume this. Now, one big announcement that was made very recently from the Power Automate team was new preview actions that we can take with Power BI. So I want to show you how to create a flow in Power Automate to interact with your report. So I'm going to just say, what if an item is created in SQL Server? And then I want to do an action. So I would have to set up that SQL Server connection, but I'm just going to showcase all of the Power BI actions I can take. So I can add rows to a data set. For instance, if I have, in this example, if there's content added to a table and database, I want to add that row in my data set as well. I can export to file for paginated reports. I can export to file for Power BI reports. I can refresh a data set. So this is nice if my data set is connected to a table in SQL Server. When an item is updated in SQL Server, I want to tell Power BI, oh, you need to refresh your data set because there's new data. This is a great way to do this instead of having to manually update it. Or if you have scheduled updates, but there's no new data in there, why have it updating automatically when I can use Power Automate to update my data set for me. It's a really powerful tool, and I highly suggest you take a look at these options and play around to automate your interaction with your reports and your data sets utilizing Power Automate. All right, now that we've looked at our sharing options, let's talk about sharing governance. What is governance? I really have a simple definition. Governance is the answers to the questions of who, what, when, where, why, and how. Really, who should be able to share? What can they share? When should they share? Where should they share? Why should they have a reason to share? Why would they want to share? And how do you share? We talked about those options, but so how do they do that sharing? Well, I've broken this down into these components, as 7 components. We have roles and training, licensing, capacity, security sharing, sources, and reporting. So how do you give out licenses, premium capacity rules and decisions? How is data secured and how is access granted, such as using Microsoft 365 groups, for instance? Who can share? What types of sharing is allowed? Where can sharing be done? What data sources can be utilized? Where can data be published? What is the source of truth? And then who monitors to make sure the system is being used properly? Who ensures people are using data appropriately? All right, so let's go through each one of these. First of all is roles. We have to be mindful that there are different ways of utilizing the service, and I call this personas. So you have these authors, people who are taking data, creating reports and dashboards, and then sharing them out. But then you also have consumers, those that are actually receiving that shared data, whether it's through subscribing to a report or they are getting the information via a website that you're publishing that's internal on SharePoint or some other website, or that's external. And these people could be generalists, which are just regular users who know information in your company or you're wanting them to know. Or it could be data scientists, people that really know data well. And then, of course, we have leadership, whether that's the leadership of the whole entire company or just leadership of departments or groups, people that want to, at a quick glance, see their data, see what's going on with the organization, and be able to make those decisions. So we have to do planning and management of our licenses for those different personas. We have user-based and capacity-based licenses. And do remember E5, those Microsoft 365 E5 licenses do include Power BI Pro license for the user that has those E5s. But we have Power BI Pro. That's a user-based license. We have Power BI Free, which is it's a license, but it is free, and it allows your users to publish to the Power BI service. Now, I didn't say share in the Power BI service. I said they can publish. So you have capacity in Power BI service for your users to use, for them to create the reports and publish there in the Power BI Free. And then we have Power BI Premium, where we have that capacity-based license. And this is a way you can purchase the Power BI Premium, and it gives your organization, your entire organization, a license to read data reports that are housed in that premium capacity. We also have Power BI embedded licenses. And then coming soon, we have Power BI Premium per user licenses. This is a way for us to buy Power BI Premium capacity, but it be on a per user basis, not for the whole organization. So this is actually going to give us the ability to bridge the gap between user licenses, which is a Power BI Pro license, and an organizational license with those premium capacity, and be able to really bridge that gap. And I think this has been a need for a while in Power BI. So this is coming soon, and I really look forward to be able to utilize this for my clients. So capacity. We need to keep in mind and how are we going to allow our users to use capacity. So we have shared capacity and dedicated capacity. And this is really talking about storage and refreshes and the size of our data set. So we need to think about who decides what is needed. Who gets to decide based upon the need of our organization, based upon the need this user has to store data. Is that going to be in the shared space, or is that going to be in dedicated capacity? And what scenarios need dedicated versus shared capacity? That is an answer we need to be thinking through, so that when those people who are deciding, yes, you get dedicated, or this data needs to be in a dedicated capacity, what are the kind of the bullets or the rules of the road, as it were? What determines if it's dedicated versus just using the shared capacity, which is Power BI Pro? And then there's security. So we have to think about the protecting our data, and this is talking about access and authentication. We want our data to be secure, but it needs to be accessible. So our governance plan needs to balance that between, okay, we secure it, but it needs to be accessible. Remember, we're trying to break down silos and empower our users to make decisions based upon data. But if they can't get to it, then how are they going to do that? They can't. So we need to make sure we define how are our internal people going to get to the data. How are external users going to authenticate? How are we going to share with external users, whether those are customers or clients or partners? There's going to be needs for them to access data. So how do we allow them to access data? How is content accessed, or the access managed? How do you manage? Who manages it of giving access? Is it ad hoc, meaning I can just share with external people as I need to? Or does it need to be provisioned beforehand so that those external people, those partners, we have set them up for authentication beforehand? And then what labels and classifications are needed when we're talking about our data? We can label content with those labels in Microsoft 365 that we can say this data is highly confidential, for instance, meaning you have to be an internal user to be able to get to this data, and only certain users can get to it. I mentioned before on sharing, is it planned or ad hoc? It is key to collaborate so we can all learn together. So how do we do that sharing? If it's ad hoc, meaning I'm doing my report and I just go and share it to a user or a group, that's ad hoc. Or do I need to really plan out who these personas are, who these groups are, especially when we're talking about externals? So when we add externals that way, when we're just ad hoc sharing, then they get added to our Active Directory in Azure. So they get added as an external user. They have to authenticate and go through that process. But maybe we should maybe we should plan and know who those users are beforehand and add them. Our IT admin can add them into our Azure AD as an external user, so that they can then be used and managed moving forward. And where should that sharing happen? Should that sharing happen only in a dedicated space or a shareable space with the common areas within Power BI? And then how are we going to govern our sources? What is your source of truth? That should always be your question when you're talking about data. Where is the truth? And this goes for organization data, those data sets that you can certify as this is the true data from our organization, as well as personal data. Those, we talked about early in the session on Excel workbooks, that people are working out of those and making decisions on a daily basis across your company. So what is that source of truth, though, and who manages those data sources? And what certification processes you will have for saying, hey, this is organizational data? Because just because I have access to a table in a database doesn't mean that's what I should be using as a source of truth. Maybe there needs to be some transformation to that data before I consume it. So who is going to certify? And what does that process look like for determining organizational data? We need to keep track of what's going on with our data. So not just from a security perspective, but also from tracking adoption. We go through all this trouble of setting up our data sources, of managing and governing how people get access to it, how it's shared and all that, but is it even being used? So we need to track adoption and the usage of our data that we have set up and made available, as well as compliance. We want to make sure that we are not sharing publicly information that is meant to be private, for instance, and utilizing those services that really satisfy our reporting needs. And then also who needs to see the reports. So we're making these reports for usage and auditing reports, but who needs to see those reports? Is it, security need to be involved, leadership need to be involved in any way? If you have an adoption program in your organization, making sure that the services like Power BI that you're bought and paid for are actually being utilized, but not just utilized, but utilized in the right way. But who needs to see those reports? So I have a couple of resources for you. One is a governance document that I have put together, and you can access it by just holding up your phone's camera app to this QR code over here to the right, and it'll take you to this page for easy downloading. Or you can just go to danielglenn.com/sharegov, the URL right there. And it's really just a starting point for your Power BI governance plan. Those things I just talked about, those questions that you need to have answered, go to that document, download it, and you'll be able to get a jump start on creating that governance plan for your organization. Another resource that it's available to you is the Governance and Admin White Paper. This is Microsoft guidance on deployment. Melissa Coates and Chris Webb have written this document for Microsoft, and I just have a short link there. Again, you can scan the QR code. It'll take you directly to this, or you can go to danielglenn.com/JGC7. It's just a short URL there to take you to that document. It's fantastic. There's a lot of information there that will help you on your journey of not just governing how the service is used, but also deploying. How do you roll this out to your users? What is that training plan you need to be thinking about? It's a fantastic document, and I highly recommend it for you to get that for your organization. Okay, as we wrap up, I want to talk about the key takeaways that I've talked about today. You need to know your data sources. And this is not just knowing where they are. So we're doing that audit of going out in that survey of going out and finding our data and making sure we know where all of those valuable resources are, but also knowing it so that we can certify it as organizational data so people can trust that they're getting that source of truth. Remember, share our reports. We need to break down those barriers and break down those silos so that we're all learning together. But don't copy the data. If we're copying the data, we lose that source of truth automatically. So we want to share our data. And of course, we want to do it securely. We want to make sure that we're sharing it appropriately. We don't publish to web when we're trying to share organizational data. That is a big no-no. So we want to make sure that we are securing our content. And governance is a must. Some people look at governance as something that is overused, or maybe it's has not been successful in your organization in the past, trying to come up with a governance plan. And I understand that. I've seen it within my organization and other organizations. But it really is a must. Whether you have an official document that is certified and leadership has checked off on it, and you have a governance board, for instance, or it is just a document that you have on your desk when someone asks for, they want to be part of premium capacity, for instance. Well, that's fine. What are those questions you need to ask them to figure out whether they should be part of your premium capacity or not? What license do they need a Power BI Pro license? Those kind of questions. We need to have governance so that we can just answer those questions. That's all it is. Again, thank you so much for being part of this year's past virtual summit. And thank you for being here in my session. And I really want to connect with you. So you can visit my website at danielglenn.com and connect with me on Twitter at danielglenn. I'd love to continue the conversation here. And again, if you and your organization need help with sharing and coming up with that governance plan, reach out to me. I'm most certainly want to help you in your data sharing journey. Thank you so much for being here.